Okay, now, Lord knows nobody, and I mean nobody, likes making fun of Notre Dame more than I do for a lot of the obvious reasons. I don't understand the number of people right now running around the internet pointing and laughing at LSU hiring away Brian Kelly from Notre Dame as if it's some kind of a bad or even terrible hire. I don't get it at all. Whatever we think about Notre Dame and the jokes that we make and all this kind of stuff, how many coaches have been winning 10, 11 games a year for a decade plus? I mean, Notre Dame, and I know they won't join a conference. Look at the schedule. They play the service academy. They handpick their schedule. I know all that. They don't have to play a 13th game. I know. But I've spent years talking about all that stuff. Brian Kelly is not a bad head coach, okay? And at a place like LSU, a more talent-rich state than Notre Dame is, and you say, well, Notre Dame recruits nationally. Everybody recruits nationally. He's not going to have some of the recruiting restrictions at LSU that he had at Notre Dame, and I'm not saying that to use that as an excuse for Notre Dame as to why they get blown out or whatever. Believe me, I know all that, but they're just pointing and laughing as if this is some kind of a bad hire. If you're telling me, are you telling me that if you're a Florida fan, you would take Billy Napier over Brian Kelly? If you say that, then you're only saying that because you're a Florida fan. I mean, and I think Billy Napier is a good hire. I already talked about that, so that's not an insult towards Napier. This is a great hire for LSU. Now, just like with Napier, just like with any coaching hire, there's no guarantee. I'm not saying this is a great hire and, oh my God, Brian Kelly and LSU is going to run Nick Saban out of Alabama and dominate the West for the next 10 years and win 114 national titles. No, I'm not saying any of that. He might not do any of that. But this isn't a bad hire. This isn't a bad hire. Brian Kelly can coach. When you look at what Notre Dame really has been missing, it's really elite playmaking wide receivers. Is that going to be a problem at LSU? No. Come on. Talent's not the issue at LSU. LSU has won a national title with each of its last 3 head coaches. Can any other school say that? I'm seriously asking. I'm not sure they can. I don't know if there's a school who has won a national title with each of their last 3 head coaches outside of LSU. Nick Saban, Les Miles, and Ed Orgeron. Nick Saban is Nick Saban. We know what he is. You're telling me you think Les Miles and Ed Orgeron are better coaches than Brian Kelly? They won national titles at LSU, Orgeron and Les Miles. Brian Kelly is miles better than either Les Miles or Ed Orgeron. And again, I'm not saying that means he's going to win a national title. Look, I love when teams do dumb shit. And there's been plenty of hires that teams have made that I thought was stupid. And I came right on here and said it. Willie Taggart at Florida State. Dan Mullen at Florida. Will Muschamp at South Carolina. Every coach Tennessee's hired in the last 12 years. I come on here and I say it all the time. This is not a bad hire. And again, go back and check my record. No one likes to clown Notre Dame more than I do. This is a good hire for LSU. And people are saying, I can't believe somebody would leave Notre Dame for LSU. Do you have any idea how much money Brian Kelly was making per year at Notre Dame? Keep in mind, this is Notre Dame now. The same Notre Dame that its fans will tell you, we don't need to join a conference. We print money. We got our own TV contract with NBC. Yeah, you play 6 games a year on there. What I mean, every SEC team in America, every SEC team makes more in their TV deal than Notre Dame does. But besides that, if Notre Dame's got all this money, why were y'all paying this man $2.7 million a year? And I'm not looking down on $2.7 million a year like that's chump change. That's a lot of money. But look around. This guy's made the playoffs twice. Twice. How many coaches have made the playoffs twice? Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lincoln Riley, Jimbo Fisher. I think that's it. Those are all $7, $8, $9 million, $10 million a year coaches. And Notre Dame is up here paying Brian Kelly $2.7 million. LSU is paying him $9 million. Well, they're paying him $8 million, but with bonuses, it'll be basically $9.5 million a year he's going to be making for each of the next 10 years. And there's all kinds of incentives in there too that can bump that up. But basically, to put it simply, he's making about $9 million a year. at LSU. That's 4 times. That's almost 4 times what he was making at Notre Dame. So to anybody that says, I don't understand why you would leave Notre Dame to go to LSU, first of all, I think it's at worst, it's a lateral move. It's not like, Notre Dame up on a pedestal. Back when you used to watch football games in black and white and people worship Notre Dame, those days are over. There's a lot of Notre Dames now. That's just reality. That TV deal did help Notre Dame 25 and 30 years ago because they were on TV every week and not everybody else was. Now everybody's on TV every week. So it's not like this is some huge step down. It's just the first time a coach has voluntarily left Notre Dame, though, to take another major job. It is the first time that's happened. And I'll admit, I was shocked. I didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Brian Kelly claims he didn't see it coming, but we know how that goes. Have you heard Brian Kelly's story? Brian Kelly was in Los Angeles, L.A., on a recruiting trip for Notre Dame when he got a text message or a phone call or whatever from his agent that said, hey, I got some good news. Looks like the deal's done with LSU. He's in a recruit's living room or whatever. So he gets back on the plane, flies back to South Bend. On the plane, he's got his attorney on the plane with him. They finalized the deal with LSU in the air, basically. Land in South Bend. He goes in, talks to the team for 4 minutes. 4 minutes he talked to the team. Leaves, gets back on a plane down to Louisiana. The rest is history. It is strange to me. Notre Dame, although I don't think it's going to happen, there is a scenario where Notre Dame gets into the playoffs, right? They need a couple of things to happen. They need Alabama to lose, and then they probably need either Oklahoma State or Michigan to lose, and perhaps both. But wouldn't that be weird if Notre Dame is playing in the playoffs on New Year's Eve while Brian Kelly is down in Baton Rouge with his thumb up his butt? That would be strange. Very strange. And the president and athletic director at Notre Dame have said they're not hiring an interim head coach. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if that means they're just not going to have a head coach. I don't know if that means they know who they want as a replacement and they're just going to name them immediately. A few names floating around, some obvious ones. Marcus Freeman, who's on the staff there now. More on that in a second. And Luke Fickell, believe it or not, is a name that seems to be floating around a lot. I'm not sure Luke Fickell's going to leave Cincinnati, though. They're joining the Power 5 here in a couple of years when they join the Big 12. And it looks like Luke Fickell has found a way to get Cincinnati into the playoffs without even being in the Power 5. So we'll see. Again, money talks. So we'll see what happens. The Marcus Freeman angle is interesting because the word is that Brian Kelly wants Marcus Freeman, on his staff at LSU. So Notre Dame, I'm assuming, doesn't want to name Marcus Freeman the interim head coach at Notre Dame, and then 2 days later lose another coach when if he decides to bolt for LSU along with Brian Kelly. That would be really embarrassing. So I don't really know what's going on with the whole we're not naming an interim coach thing. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the Brian Kelly to LSU is not a bad hire. Brian Kelly is not a bad head coach. He's the winningest head coach in Notre Dame history. History again. What do you like to tell the Notre Dame fan when they try to run their mouth in modern times? You tell them, "Oh yeah, we know you were really, really good a long time ago." Well, no coach was as good as Brian Kelly, at least in terms of winning percentage. He's got the highest winning percentage of any coach in Notre Dame history. History. I know he's gotten blown out every time he's made it to a major postseason bowl game. Believe me, I know, because I've been talking about it for years. Believe me, I know that. But he gets there. He gets there, and there aren't very many that do. Not one, but 2 playoff appearances, I will remind you. 2 playoff appearances. In his only year in the ACC, he went 1-1 against Clemson. It just so happened the one he lost was the conference title game, but he beat him in the regular season. So this idea that LSU dropped the ball or that this is some kind of a bad hire, I don't get it. And believe me, for what I do on this channel, it would be better for me if it was a bad hire. It would be better for me if I could come on here and point and laugh and make a bunch of joke videos, just like with Bill Napier at Florida. I would love for Florida to go out and hire somebody that I thought was going to fall on their face and just be another clown like Dan Mullen. I don't think Napier is that. I already made a whole video on that. You can go back and watch it. But so yeah, that's my thoughts there. Brian Kelly down to LSU. The only concern I have, and I have heard this mentioned, a culture fit. He doesn't fit the culture. If he wins, then he fits.